Welcome to the Keystone Kindergarten video for Halls of Infusion, a new Mythic Plus dungeon for Season 2 of Dragonflight. I'm Frank and I'm going to take you through every interrupt, every dodge, and everything you need to know about the trash and bosses to be successful in Halls of Infusion. As we kick off the first section of this dungeon, engineers should take note of the limited immortality device located on the north side of the first ring. Taking a left at the entrance of the ring will lead you to where engineers with a trait skill of at least 25 can grant everyone one prevented death over the course of 60 minutes, possibly saving you a wipe or a run back. For the first set of mobs, we start with Primalist Geomancers, who will attempt to cast an Earth Shield on a friendly target, allowing them to reduce damage taken and heal up when hit. Keep an eye out for kicking this, but also avoid the Geomancer's Seismic Slam, stunning players after taking a large amount of damage. A deadly mob found within most of the first sets of pulls is the Containment Apparatus. Containment Beam will target a random player and stun them for 6 seconds while taking large amounts of damage over the stun. This can stack with multiple apparatuses on the pull, so CC wherever you can, but save your kicks for Expulse. This is a 20-yard AoE that hits hard, but can be avoided by range sticking far outside the 20 yards. Also abundant in the first sets of pulls is Refty Defenders, who will have Demoralizing Shout that needs to be interrupted, otherwise everyone within 10 yards will have their damage reduced by 25%. This does stack, but can be outranged if kicks aren't available. Tanks, ensure you point these mobs away from friends as they will Spear Flurry into the tank, leaving a nasty bleed that can stack as well. Finally, Primalist Ravagers will be found to have an aura named Tailwind that increases the attack and movement speed of enemies. Another interrupt to keep on your radar is Blasting Gust, where the Ravager will hit everyone with a small chunk of health, but also knock them back, possibly making pulls more chaotic. Once you clear the ring, you will make your way to the first boss, Watcher Irideus. For tanks, he will use Titanic Fist, knocking down players in the cone. Be sure to point him away from your group. Healers will want to watch for Static Surge, which will be a 6-second group-wide damage that needs to be healed through. For the main portion of this fight, Irideus will first select 3 players and mark them with Power Overload. Healers, don't immediately dispel, as when you do, the players will leave a power field behind that will effectively cut off some of the room. This is important because once the power field drops, you can expect Irideus to cast Ablative Barrier and begin siphoning power, where he will increase his damage done for the remainder of the fight until you break the barrier. You do this by having the tank collect the 4 nullification devices and try to kill them on top of Irideus. If 3 of their nullifying pulses hit Irideus, he will drop the barrier and begin the initial phase again. One final thing to note, Irideus will fire off spark volleys that will not only hit for a good portion of your health, but also leave a dot for 10 seconds. Finish Irideus and you'll begin the second section of Halls. Just like in the first section, there's a profession buff, this time for Herbalists. Take a left up the stairs after Irideus and this will lead you to the Cleansing Spores that can provide the buff. It is highly recommended to grab these as they will have a benefit to the remainder of the dungeon. In essence, the Herbalist buff will remove a stack of either poison or disease every 5 seconds for 30 minutes, which will be handy on both trash and the upcoming boss. Speaking of trash, the first mob you will see on your path is Primalist Shock Trooper. You will want to interrupt Elemental Focus, because if you fail to do so, their single target spells will become chain spells called Infused Lightning. Hidden in stealth will be Skulking Zealots. Healers, be prepared for a stun tank that may not hold aggro if unprepared when they break out of stealth with Cheap Shot. Otherwise, Rising Squall means that at every successful melee attack they'll gain 4% attack speed, so don't leave these up for too long. Before arriving at the mushroom, you will have Dazzling Dragonfly, who will have a simple cone disorient that can be kicked named Dazzle. You will also have Curious Swoglets, who contain a mechanic that we'll see on the next boss. If they're able to stack 10 applications of Gulp Swag Toxin on the player, that player will instantly die, so cleanse the poison when it stacks too high. Before the second boss will be 2 named mobs, Flamecaller Aimi and Squallbringer Sirez. Flamecaller will be the priority here. Interrupt Pyretic Bursts as often as possible, and watch for Molten Subduction, a casted route that will lead to Magma Crush, killing you if you're on your own. Squallbringer Sirez has Zephyr's Call, letting him summon mini wind elementals to be picked up by the tank, and then will charge to a player and begin casting Whirling Fury, which you should move out of. When these 2 mobs are killed, the door will open and lead you to the second boss, Gulping Goliath. On the surface, a simple fight, but some key things to be aware of. First, Goliath will cast Overpowering Croak, causing minor damage but also summoning falling debris and Swoglets to rain from above. Tanks, pick up the Swoglets immediately and cleave them quickly as they will continue to stack Gulp Swag Toxin. While this is being done, the boss will attempt to gulp a player. If he does not successfully gulp someone by standing in the green ring, he will gain a permanent enrage named Hangry, which will stack, meaning someone has to be gulped. This person will gain 3 stacks of Gulp Swag Toxin, so be ready with the cleanses. The 2 remaining spells for Goliath is Toxic Effluvia, which will require top-ups from the healer, and Belly Slam, which will hit any player within 12 yards of the landing spot with some serious damage. Following boss number 2, the next set of trash have unique interactions with each other, starting with the Primalist Ice Caller, who will cast Ice Shards, but more importantly will empower the nearby Glacial Proto-Dragons with Primal Affinity. In the Glacial Proto-Dragon's case, tanks will want to keep all Proto-Dragons facing away from the group, as the Glacial Proto-Dragon will have Oceanic Breath. Within the range of the Primal Ice Caller, they will also gain Deep Chill, slowing players after a cast. Next we have the pairing of the Primalist Gale Singer, who will cast Thunderstorm over an area damaging people in it, and also cast Wind Buffet, which can be interrupted. Their Primal Affinity will empower Gusting Proto-Dragons. The Gusting Dragon will have a breath that's called Gusting Breath, and when empowered will also have cast Binding Winds, stunning a nearby enemy for 6 seconds. Healers, you can dispel this stun. And the final pairing of mobs, and possibly the most dangerous, is the Primal Earthshaker, who will cast Rumbling Earth, do not get caught in the ground effect, and their Primal Affinity will empower the Subterranean Proto-Dragon. The Subterranean Dragon will have another Nature Breath to be pointed away from the group, but when empowered will cast Creeping Mold. This will hit multiple players with the disease and can stack. Calling back to the Cleansing Spores, they can dispel this for you if you still maintain the buff. After a short set of Proto-Dragon pulls, you'll arrive at the 3rd boss, Khajin the Unyielding. Another simple fight, but a number of mistakes could spell instant death. First, take note of the Ice Boulders sitting on the ground. You will need these to be fully intact to avoid her main ability, Hailstorm. After a 7-second cast, Khajin will blast out volleys at every object in the room, but the Ice Boulders can block this attack for players. If you're not paying attention, any of the Ice Boulders that have been previously damaged, indicated by the crack seen on the boulder, will avalanche, effectively doing the same damage as a Hailstorm. After Hailstorm, Khajin will perform Glacial Surge, with a 3-ring dance spell that will drop new Ice Boulders in the room. The other main spell to prepare for is Frost Cyclone. Khajin will target a player, indicated by the arrow, and after casting will launch a tornado at the player. Any Ice Boulders that are struck by this tornado will take damage, making them ineffective for the next Hailstorm. Finally, she will Frost Shock random players, slowing their movement which can be dispelled, and she will have a constant polar wind, adding a pain point for healers that lasts the entire fight. The final section of Halls is a small gauntlet that must be carefully navigated by the tank, and the remaining players must position themselves safely. The area will be littered with Aqua Ragers, who can rage with the cast of Boiling Rage. Classes with a Soothe can remove the rage, but it's also kickable. The reason you may choose to Soothe instead of kick is because at 20% health, the Aqua Rager will cast Tidal Divergence, attempting to split itself into 4 lesser mobs. Ensure that this is kicked. You will see the return of the Primalist Ice Caller and Glacial Proto-Dragon. Just know that when the 2 are up together, you will have a 33% less movement speed. This matters because throughout the gauntlet, you will have crushing tsunamis chasing down the platform, hitting somewhat hard but also knocking you around. The goal in this gauntlet is to have all players except the tank stand with their backs against the pillars that line the middle or side of the platform. These will block tsunamis, allowing everyone to freely DPS. However, the tank cannot stand with the group as the dragons will breathe on top of the party, so tanks should position themselves with the group at the dragon's back while trying to sidestep the tsunamis until the dragon is down. Once you make it to the end of the gauntlet, you will face off against Infuser Soraya. Flash Flood will require everyone to move out of her splash zone while dodging everything else. Inundate will just AoE the group, causing more stress for the healer, and her other ability will be Aquarius Barrier, a self-cast barrier that should be kicked to avoid more time wasted. Once Soraya is killed, the final boss will be available to you. Primal Tsunami is a high movement based fight with an intermission that must be handled with care, much like the final boss of Nakud Offensive. First, Tempest Fury is an AoE that healers will need to keep players alive through. The Primal Tsunami will cast Infused Globule, bubbles that will spawn throughout the room that begin to drift and finally explode after 11 seconds. Should you get hit by any of them, you will have a debuff Waterlogged applied to you, which healers should immediately remove as it applies a large damage and movement slow. For tanks, Squall Buffet will smack the tank and launch them backwards, to be followed up with Focus Deluge, which will funnel damage to the tank for 5 seconds. If Primal Tsunami hits 100 energy, he will cast away players, splitting the group into 3 smaller groups and launching them down the hallways we entered the room with. As you attempt to run back, Infused Globules will still spawn, and wander, and apply Waterlogged if hit, but you will also see the return of crashing tsunamis barreling down the hallway to make things more challenging. Remember, the posts in the middle and sides should block the tsunami if you need a safe spot. When you return to the main room, there will be 4 infusers channeling Infuse on the elemental. Every 5 seconds that channel, they'll buff the boss's damage by 1%. Multiply that by 4 and this can become a problem quickly. The trade-off of pulling them all immediately is that they'll begin casting Inundate, which will splash onto all players, making it more challenging for your healer. Be careful with the decision you make, but once all infusers are dead, Primal Tsunami will return and you'll begin the countdown to Castaway again. And that's it. Best of luck on your future Mythic Dungeons. I'm Frank from Mythic Dungeon League, and we'll see you in the next one.